Well, we are live once again with another episode of Coffee with Humans with my soon-to-be new friend, Kevin. Kevin, welcome to Coffee with Humans.
Jason, thank you so very much for having me. I'm excited to chat and see where we go today.
Well, you look like a pro.
I appreciate that.
This whole video thing. You got a boom mic there. You got headphones on. You got a cool background.
I'm a podcaster first, Jason. I'm a podcaster first. So, and I literally said this to somebody earlier. I said, I might not always be the most professional, but if I look professional, I think that's probably half the battle. So I appreciate it very much.
Absolutely. I'm going to pick your brain on that too, because this idea of looking the part. It's an interesting concept to be able to look the part. Well, how do you brand yourself? So we can talk about that in a little bit. And we can also talk about this stylish beard I have and how those two things connect. But I'm very curious. I don't know why anybody clicks the button to have coffee with a random stranger. So tell me why did you choose to click the button to have coffee with me?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of room for conversation, and when you talk to different people, it goes down different routes. And I think everybody can pull something out of you that somebody else can't. So that's what it is for me. It's I want to learn about you. I want to learn about myself. That's really what it is for me. Yeah. It's because if you're somebody who has a show that's just about having conversations, I assume you're a very strong conversationalist, and I'm sure it'll be a valuable, fun time.
I hope that's true. It's gonna be really awkward if it's not.
Well, that's all right. I mean, I'm sure we both had awkward interactions in the past. Let's just add it to the list.
Oh yeah, for sure. Right. I lean into awkward. I've got this, I don't know if it's a saying or not, but sometimes I swear, but it's F awkward. It's like just F awkward because so much of what a person could be doing in their lives requires them to step into some space that feels awkward. It's not, it's all in a person's mind. After you've done that and sat down at the table where you thought you shouldn't sit, it's like, oh, well, this is fine. This isn't a big deal at all. And a whole universe of opportunities, I think, opens up in front of you. But it's always when you're like, fuck awkward.
I've said that to people before of like, oh, this is getting weird. It's like, if it's getting weird, you're making it weird. You know what I mean? Like we don't have to make it weird unless you want it. It's an interesting thing. And to your point, it's probably from the perspective of the person. The person who is most confident usually leads the dance. So if you have two confident people, it shouldn't get too awkward, I guess, in that theory.
I like that. The person who's most confident leads the dance.
Yeah. But I think it's a good little analogy.
It must be. You are you're a podcaster first, you said, and that's why you got the cool background. But that's not needed for podcasting. That's needed for video casting. So talk to me.
So all of our podcasts are on video. That's the easiest way to put it. So we have 1,100 episodes. We just crossed our 1,100th episode. And then every single one is on YouTube. And then we take all that for micro content. So we want to have nice, crisp video to show on social media.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, micro content, video, podcasting, why?
I think I started it for the same reason most people do. It seemed really cool. It was awesome to just be able to have conversations with people. I never planned on making it my work or my income or a business, but I made six figures in my mid-20s, and I still ended up sitting on the edge of a bed debating suicide. And during that whole process, I had found podcasting, and I had started a podcast before my suicidal ideations. And I remember saying to somebody, imagine if you could do this for a living. Like, just have a conversation, like to your point, Jason, just having a conversation amongst friends or interviewing somebody that you look up to. Imagine being able to do that 7 days a week and not having to punch a time clock. That for me was the dream. And I started it from a place of curiosity and trying to raise my own awareness on certain things and then talking to other people about theirs.
Interesting. So what kind of topics do you cover?
We are holistic self-improvement. So it's level up your life, love, health, and wealth. That's really what we're talking about. A lot of people are financially successful, but they're not necessarily healthy. And a lot of people are financially successful and their relationships behind the scenes aren't good. So I don't want to have one of the three pillars. I want to have all of them. Now, will that take me 3 times as long and be 3 times as hard? Probably, but I'm willing to lead the charge on that. So yeah, that's something we talk about is just holistic life, love, health, and wealth. You can have it all. It's going to be more work.
Okay, so let's tie that into a comment that you made earlier, which is looking the part.
Mm.
And I'm sporting this fancy beard, which is it's bigger. It's a bigger beard. It's more manly. Maybe it's it was recommended to me. Why don't you grow like slightly bigger beard? And so I'm learning how to grow a bigger beard because I've always just kind of trimmed this thing down. And
Mm.
and this idea of looking the part or becoming, right? This thought entered my mind the other day, and this is not a new thought, but it reiterated to myself that when a person wants to become somebody different or somebody
Mm.
better or take on new challenges or do new things, they envision a life in front of them. It's necessary to become the individual to live that life. So, what are the characteristics of the individual who lives that life? And I've returned to these lessons over the years. In fact, just wrote a book about it. But um, part of what growing this beard right now is setting how do I want to show up? What characteristics do I want to display? And a person's look, a person's brand, what they, how people perceive them is important. And it unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, it is what it is. People do judge a book by its cover. And so I'm putting on a little bit more of a beard look and trying to figure out, even how I dress, into the future. But how does that work towards this concept of being well?
Yeah. First of all, if I could learn how to grow a beard, if you can like send me that after, like what are the steps to learn how to grow one? Because it ain't happening for me, Jason. I've tried and it comes in and it's bad. So that's why we're clean shaven. So early on, we got a lot of like really good guests on the show. And I remember thinking our first studio was in my business partner's mom's house in his sister's old bedroom. And it was just a black backdrop and it was garbage. It wasn't good. And I remember thinking that so many people look way better than they are. They're marketing beyond their current capabilities, where we were under marketing for our current capabilities. And I don't mean that from an ego standpoint, but we would interview people and they'd say, like, yeah, you can have 20 minutes, and they'd stay for an hour. And then they'd mentor us after behind the scenes. And it was like, okay, some people recognize the value that we're bringing, but many people won't because, to your point, they are judging a book by its cover, and our cover sucks. Our cover's not good. So that was what it was, is if you want to be taken seriously, you have to look seriously. You have to act seriously. And that was really an important step for us. Now, I'm not saying you go over and you oversell or you overmarket. Like, we're not about that. But I want to look like a professional. I want to look like somebody who's recorded 1,100 podcast episodes and has a successful show. I think that's an important part of it. I believe that when you think of somebody's results, most people can't actually understand what your results are, but they can take from what you have and say, okay, they must have X result. So I do believe looking at something helps people fill in the spot between where they think you are and where you actually are. I think that's an important distinction, because unless you're a podcaster, you don't know what that means, or unless you're a business owner, you don't know what certain things mean. And I think the results help people say, oh, okay, they're actually successful. Cool.
Yeah. I Something that stood out for me in what you're talking about is this idea that people sometimes over
Mm.
I don't exactly I don't remember exactly how you put it, but they over present or over project the and I look at it like this, that they put on a facade
Yeah.
with no foundation.
Mhm.
It's particle board underneath, and it's easy. It's so easy. The barrier to entry of putting yourself out there and access to digital projects, things like that. It's so easy to put yourself out there and claim all sorts of things. You're just copying from somebody else and have never actually done the work.
Yeah.
Don't actually know what you're talking about. It's just sound bites, and they're inspirational, and it's almost like the proliferation of content, the ability to make content. Um, I wonder, I wonder how do people, or in your experience, how do people cut through uh, to understand, or how do they see whether somebody has foundation to what they're talking about or whether they don't, whether it's just facade and they're, over projecting, um, versus somebody who actually has who's actually been there, done that.
Yeah, I think for most people, it usually comes after pain. It comes after you trust somebody, you buy into what they're doing, and you get hurt. Not necessarily physically hurt, but maybe financially hurt. This is my quote for that. The closer you get to somebody, the closer you get to the truth. You got to know these people behind the scenes. And you'll know very quickly, is the person the same in front as they are behind the scenes? I'll be very transparent, Jason. We've been disappointed a lot by getting the opportunity to meet people, interview them, and then see them behind the scenes. It's like, oh no, you too? Like that's happening with you too? Like this is all catered. You're not the person you say you are. So yeah, that's my quote to think about. That is, the closer you get to somebody, the closer you get to the truth. So do your best to figure out, get some behind the scenes stuff. Go to something free that they have and see. I would say Google it, but everybody's got bad reviews, so that's a hard thing to do. It's a challenge because the people who are really good at making themselves look good are also really good at avoiding situations where they don't look good. So it's that interesting fine line. I don't know. I don't know what the best answer for that is, genuinely.
In my experience, a couple things come to my mind. One is ask questions.
Yeah.
Because a person, if you ask them deeper questions, you eventually find a point where they cannot answer. Or you do find, or if they've really done that, something it'll trigger an emotional response, right? And it's in those emotional responses where you see that the person is actually tied to a specific event. And so if they're speaking from a point of sound bites, there's no specific event that gave them that depth of knowledge. And so I think it's in the emotional response that you find the truth.
That's fair. That's fair. And yeah, the other thing too is, to your point about the sound bites, the stuff that works on social media is usually not the stuff that helps you in real life. We always talk about, when you look at the workouts that people do on social media, most of those workouts, that's not the way they built the physique they had. They just know that's what people want to be entertained far more than educated. And I think it's always been that way. So I think people are trying to ride that line, and some people are better at educating than they are entertaining, and vice versa. So, but yeah, I love the questions part, because if you keep digging, eventually you'll get to the root, and the root might not be truth. It might be something else. So I think that's a great point.
Yeah. So you have 11, would you say 1,100 podcasts or 1,100 episodes?
Yeah, 1,100. We'll be dropping our 1,100th next week, I think. Yeah.
Wow. That's impressive.
It's a lot.
All
It's
under
a
the
lot.
same. Yeah. Right. And how many do you release them every day?
Yeah. 7 days a week, like 20-minute episodes, 7 days a week.
Okay. And do you just out of curiosity, because I'm up to, I might have done 200 and something episodes of Coffee with Humans. I've got 100 episodes of a thing called What Works. I've got 100 something episodes of live streamed conference stuff. And I'm curious, when you release your episodes, you have them edited down, I'm assuming. Yeah.
So for us, no. The only thing we do is we have the team add the intro, the outro, and a midtro. In our 1,100 episodes, we've probably edited 5 or 6. Because maybe like we'll start and we'll just get into like a giggle fest because we're just like so tired, so past go. And it's like, all right, we got to either edit that out or we got to redo it because that's not going to be valuable. But from the beginning, it was all kind of reverse engineered on, when you're on stage, there is no editing. You don't get to edit on stage. And I think having that safety net under you of, well, if you misspeak, don't worry, it'll get edited. I don't want that, because then I'm not going to take it as seriously. So for us, it was more reverse engineered on, look, just get better and get to the point where you don't have to edit. In worst case scenario, obviously we can, but yeah, for us, it's usually we throw it in the folder, add an intro, add an outro, add a midtro, and off to the races.
Yeah. So I chose Coffee with Humans in much the same way. So now a couple of things I took, I guess principally I took all the things that annoy me about the process of creating video or audio, and I just took them out of my process. So I don't have to think about it. So I thought, well, I will talk to a stranger anywhere. It's fine. I can do it. And so I will not do any research, which means I don't need to schedule them or ask questions or figure out what we're going to talk about.
Mm.
So I automated the whole scheduling process. People can just go in there and schedule themselves, onto my calendar. And I spend no effort on it. And then I know all the tech stuff and that's all set up. It's ready to go. So people, you receive some automated emails
Mhm.
and they, ta-da, everybody, people show up in the right place at the right time. And then we go live for a period of time and all of that is done. It's done. It's over.
Yeah.
I don't have to touch it. The
Yeah.
worst that could happen is sometimes I've been playing around with this on YouTube. It's actually been a long time since I played around with it, but so when I say I've been playing around with it, I have played around with it on and off for 2 years. Uh, um, editing off the intro, that whole countdown
Mm.
on YouTube, because I don't think anybody stays for that.
Yeah. Fair. Fair.
Yeah.
I would say probably not. I think especially now the attention rate is so low.
Mm.
Like if you're not right into the goods, people tend to get out of there. But that's the interesting thing too is you did what was sustainable for you. Cool.
Right.
Like that's to be, I think that's to be congratulated. That's sustainable. What was the goal when you first started? And when you first started this, was it, what was your first thought?
2.5 years ago, I want to say it was probably April-ish timeframe. COVID had just started, and I was going through some relational changes as well in my life, and so I was feeling more detached than normal. And I'm an intro. I tend to be more introverted than extroverted, and so I don't mind like not talking to people. It's okay. uh, so I wasn't feeling it to some degree that I saw people online feeling this disconnection almost to the point of despair. Like people were spiraling out of control, high anxiety, and like I can't talk to anybody. I miss going to the office. It was, and I felt that it kind of resonating within me too. And I thought, well, I can do something about this. What I need to do is, if I'm feeling disconnected, the first thing I'm doing is I'm trying to figure out how to get connected. And if other people are feeling this as well, but they don't have a method to talk to somebody, I will just simply talk to somebody. And so I put out one LinkedIn post that I'm going to have 52 coffees this year. If you want to have coffee with me, I'll have coffee with you. Just click the link. And it was on Zoom at the time. I didn't have the live streaming set up, and it was all recorded. And then somebody said, well, could I watch those? And I thought, well, yeah, I guess so. And so I put out little excerpts, and that was time consuming. And I don't particularly like to rewatch my stuff. And so then I thought, well, I'm just gonna do the whole thing live because, like, to your point, it's like it's sustainable for me.
Yeah.
And then it became a thing, and people started signing up. And then at one point in time, I've got it down to more of a science now, but at one point in time, I was sometimes doing 2 a day, just back to back to back to back.
Yeah.
Every day, and that was unsustainable. And so then I dialed the whole thing back and pushed things off, and then so principally it was a point to connect to people, right?
Yeah.
And and there people are starved for connection, and they're also starved, as kind of like the intro talks about, starved for just a conversation. Everybody's trying to sell everybody all the time. Stop.
Yeah.
Why are we constantly trying to sell? It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially like, I don't have anything against LinkedIn, but I mean, if I get one more person that friends me and says, hey, what are your thoughts on this? Like I don't know. It makes me wonder how anybody is successful at business. Anybody who does that can't be that successful if that's your right. It's like,
I don't know.
What are you gonna?
It reminds me of some dude who slipped into my LinkedIn DMs and said, "Have you noticed any new trends?" That was it was like a conversation starter, and I was just like, "I'm not playing the game." And I said, so I just wrote back, "No." And it's almost for sport because I just want to know, are you going to follow up on this?
Yeah.
I had somebody send me, I've started to do this, people, if what they're talking about, what they're DMing me about is halfway interesting, LinkedIn now has the start video chat button. And I know that half or more, maybe 80% of these things are all automated. There is nobody on the other end of this thing, right? And so I'll just click the start video chat and then wait and see if anybody connects. I had one guy who was like, "Hey, I saw you just video chatted me. I'm so sorry I was on a call, but I'd love to follow up with you. And I was like, all right, respect. Like
Okay.
if you're just gonna come at me with, automated messages, it's like I get it. I understand why people do that. You have to make people aware of what if you think you've got something great to offer the world, you've got to figure out how to make people aware of it. And one way to do that is to DM people.
Yeah.
Fine. Whatever. No harm, no foul. But it is the noise. The noise level is increasing. And how do you get back? How do you cut through the noise when you really do
Yeah.
have something of value? And if you don't have something of value, if it's, I'll ask people who do the whole, hey, we want to market your LinkedIn stuff. It's like, what makes you better than anybody else?
Mm.
And everybody thinks that every response I've received, everybody's saying the same exact thing. We do it by hand. We really pay attention to your account. It's like everybody said it. You all think you're better than everybody else, but you're doing the same thing.
Mm.
Find your superpower. Find what's
Yeah.
amazing about you, and then go sell that.
Yeah. Well, it just makes me wonder because it's like if you were that good, you wouldn't have to send cold messages to people. Like you'd have some sort of system behind the scenes to actually make this work. Because there's no way that's sustainable for them. There's no way. But then again, maybe I'm off because I've never done that. It's just so weird to me. Like I wouldn't expect you to work. If I messaged you, Jason, and just said, "Hey, Jason, thanks for connecting. By any chance, are you interested in getting 100 new leads a month?" Like I don't think that would work for me. Feels weird.
It gets leads for some people. It's a numbers game.
Yeah,
right?
that's fair.
You hit your person at the point of need, or you stay in front of them. The challenge is how do you not become annoying in a world where everybody's speaking, everyone is talking now. It's as if it would be as silly as if we all opened our doors, like get in your neighborhood, just have everybody open their door, or if you're in an apartment complex, everybody opens their doors, leaves them open
Mm.
for several hours a day, and every conversation you just have it
Yeah.
outside, yelling to everyone else. It would be so noisy. Eventually be like, hey guys, can you just go home,
Mm.
go inside, take that away from me? And that's what we have digitally now. We just have cacophony of sound. Everybody's talking all the time. And kind of to your point, there's I can't remember who it was. Well, I don't know. It's the popular mantra now is create content, create content, create content. You have
Yeah.
to create. Just keep putting stuff out there. And the more stuff you put out there, even though it's repeated, then the better you're doing.
Mm.
Something like that. That's sort of the mantra I hear out there. But what happens when everybody's speaking? What happens when everybody's got a podcast? What happens when everybody's TikToking their lives? What happens when everybody's sending DMs saying, "Hey, here's the next great thing that I could interest you in." What then?
Yeah. Well, I think the cream always rises to the top eventually. I think that's what it is. I mean, at one point, it's like anybody can run a commercial. Well, not really. I mean, you have to be financially in a certain degree to run a commercial, but anybody could put their ad in the yellow pages or anybody could do Craigslist. So I just think there's more. The lead time is probably longer between creation and rising to the top. Because I definitely subscribe to you got to be putting content out, valuable content. It has to be valuable to the people that you're trying to help. But the other part of that too is, and I think this is where a lot of people get mixed up. Where do people go after they consume your content? Because is it, oh, they're supposed to book a free call and then they end up a client? I think that's where things get broken. Because if you're not building an actual community of real human beings that you're nurturing through value, then it's not really, to your point, it really is a numbers game. Right. But that's always been my thing, is like add value in alignment with what your brand is. And people, if you have places for them, they'll fit into your business. They'll fit in. Maybe they don't want to pay you. Maybe they'll never pay you, but you might have a Facebook group they want to join. Like that's cool. So yeah, but I agree. I think a lot of people are just like content, 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 content. But where does it go? Like where is the next logical step for them to go that's based on value, not necessarily dollars?
Yeah.
I
It
got
has
my
to be
coffee too,
significant.
Jason.
Oh,
I
good.
realized I messed up. I didn't, this whole time you
Woo.
have your coffee cup up. I had one job. I have it.
I know. What are you talking exactly? The great secret is sometimes it's not coffee.
Well, it is for me. What do you got over there?
Well, it's for me today, coffee,
Okay.
because it's 12 a.m. or 12 a.m. That's not true. It's 11:58 a.m.
Yeah,
Almost 12, almost
almost 12.
noon where I'm at.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, we never covered this, but
Mm.
for our viewers and listeners, I hardly know Kevin.
Yes.
We're just getting to know each other now, and we had a little tech check beforehand. So I don't even know where you are. Where are you at, Kevin? Tell our
I
viewers.
live in New Hampshire in the United States. So it is also 12:58 for me. Oh, no, it's 12:58 for me, not 11:58.
Yeah. New Hampshire.
New Hampshire.
As opposed
not
to the old
one.
Hampshire.
Yes. Yep. The new and improved one.
You ever been to the old Hampshire?
No. Nope. No, not yet.
Me neither. I look to go. I look forward to going to the old Hampshire at some point in time.
Well, let me know when you do. We can have coffee there if they serve it.
You know, there's a Jason Todd somewhere near the old Hampshire. He's in Scotland, I believe. Maybe Ireland. I don't know. Someplace over there. And yeah, he's Jason Todd. People started congratulating me on the great speech I had given at some conference at some point in time. And I was like, I don't think that was me. And so then I went to LinkedIn, to the point of connection, how to use all these things valuably. I went to LinkedIn. I said, I think we need to gather all the Jason Todds together and we will all have a conversation. It turns out that Jason Todd, we had a great conversation video. I look like him. He's old. He's slightly older than me, but without the beard, we look almost identical, which is weird.
Interesting.
Even the same types of glasses.
You think you could turn him on to the beard?
I don't know.
I think some people are meant to like, I feel when I look at you, it's like, I think you should have a beard for sure. It just fits. But then again, maybe if I saw you without it, because I don't know you at all. So maybe if I saw you without it, I might say like, yeah, definitely for you, not having a beard is the play.
No, it's beard is where it's at. Otherwise my face gets a little too round. I think.
I'm jealous.
Personally.
I'm envious.
I'm just growing it down at the end, so it just pulls my chin a little bit like forward. Yeah,
I like it.
Good.
Nice. Yeah, side profile.
Well, this is a good conversation. So you, what types of people have you talked with on your podcast? What's the genre? What's the focus?
It's usually authors, speakers, coaches. So we've talked to people all the way from school teachers, who are bringing self-awareness into schools, all the way up to billionaires who are like real estate tycoons who have really crushed it there. But the through line has always been, what is this person really good at that they can add value to the audience with? Like, what's your specialty? What are you the best at that we can take all of your knowledge and deliver to the audience? So anybody who can help our listeners improve in some way, shape, or form. We've had rappers on. We've had professional mixed martial arts fighters on. So it's been definitely a plethora of different individuals. And it's interesting because I've gotten the opportunity to actually interview people that I looked up to. Like, we interviewed a guy named Kenny Florian. He used to fight in the UFC. And I remember watching this man on TV. And when we sent a message out, it was like, this would be so weird for me if I got the opportunity to ask him what it was like to fight this person. It was weird. But yeah, so anybody who we think can bring value to the audience, that's kind of the direction we're going for. But we actually stopped having guests kind of in part due to what we talked about earlier, where we've been let down a lot, where people behind the scenes, it's very hard for me to stay within my character, know somebody isn't necessarily who they say they are, and then release their interview. It just throws things off for me. I don't feel aligned doing it. So we've had interviews with very, very successful people that we just can't. They just deleted them. Said, we can't do this. And we've had people that we had scheduled and I canned it the day of. And I said, this isn't aligned. We can't do this. We can't do it.
Where does that for you, where does that sort of moral character originate?
I don't know. That's a great question. I've definitely tried to fake it till I made it in the past. Like, when I was my least happy, I looked the most successful. So that's why I think I have a weird relationship with that. I looked like I was crushing it when I was the lowest. I had a model girlfriend, sports car, all the stuff, right? Because I didn't want anybody to know how I really felt. I think the part for me is I care more about, it's for the listeners. It's not for me. And the problem is the listeners will never know the behind the scenes if we release the episode. So when we started this company and I started podcasting, my business partner, I have a business partner, Alan. We used to sit in the studio and we never talked about how much money we were going to make. And we never talked about any of that. Our competition was, I know I can be a better man. That was always it. And I know it probably sounds cliche. We were talking about it last night. But I remember saying, like, my heart is bigger than yours. I can be better. I can be a better man than you. I just know I can. And that's kind of been our through line. And I think the other thing too is, and you might not believe this, Jason, I'm interested to get your take on this. Most of our listeners are women or humans who identify as women. And I have a very unique perspective because I was raised by two women. I didn't know my dad. I met my dad when I was 27. So I have a very special place where it's kind of like my responsibility to protect our listeners. And that's something I take very, very, very seriously. So I think that's part of it too.
Your responsibility to protect your listeners.
Yeah.
Go
on our platform for sure.
Yeah. How so? How do you protect people?
Not proliferating garbage. I think we're in this interesting time where for a long time people were grind your face off, don't sleep, you don't need sleep. If you're sleeping, you're wasting time. I think we've swung the pendulum a little bit too far to only do what feels good when you feel like it and everything's going to work out in the end. Now, the problem is the truth is somewhere in the middle, but the middle is hard to sell because it's not controversial and it's just the fundamentals. So yeah, it's very much, I don't know. I mean, when you know your listeners at the degree that we do, it's very easy to see how certain things will be construed and how certain advice would just take people off the rails. It would just take people off the rails because it might seem empowering to think that it's all going to work out, right? Like, Jason, it's all going to work out. You're going to be fine. I understand what you mean in theory. Like, I love the positivity, but it's only going to work out if you make it. And that's that. There's layers to that. So most people only give layer one of what if it's meant to be, it'll be. No, I don't think so. Because if that's the case, this podcast journey for me was not meant to be. Because if I just showed up, we never would be where we are. So yeah, I think that part is I try to protect by trying to show as much of the truth as possible. Now, obviously the truth from me might be different from somebody else, but I don't know. I'm in a weird space where I've kind of realized a lot of what's going on in self-improvement isn't really self-improvement. It's more like, how do we turn this into a business than help people?
Okay.
Which is heavy. Is heavy. And that's not what we're about. I didn't start this for the money. I would have just stayed at my job if I wanted the money. But I want to help. I really want to help. That's why I do the things I do.
Yeah. Well, I think tying that back to this idea of real, honest, true connection and whether people can smell the truth or not. Ideas that don't hold weight, ideas that are, kind of this idea of plywood, right? Plywood instead of hardwood underneath the veneer. It just doesn't last as long. You get it wet and all breaks down.
Yeah.
And whereas, if you've ever gone to, the beach, let's say, sometimes there's a big log, floating along, and they can salvage sometimes those logs and turn them into something. And it can be something very beautiful and very strong. Even though it's been, floating along for a long period of time, it's been beat up. You can't do that with plywood. You can't do that with something that's fake. So I think some of these experiences are required. Some of these, quote unquote, non-truths or whatever, we're required to go through those, to hold on to them, and then have those things broken away from us to be able to discern at some point in time what's really stable, what's really true, what's really strong. Which is why I think some people give the advice of it'll all work out, because it does. Sometimes it requires your effort.
Yeah.
And sometimes it requires you to let go. You figure it out, but it'll all work out. You just don't know it yet. It'll be 40 years from now that you're like, oh.
Yeah. That's a struggle for me though. Cause it's like, wouldn't you influencing the situation make it work out better, faster, or more aligned?
Perhaps.
I think that's where I'm at with it. because I've seen so many people who like start something and they get this gut punch of like, oh wait, this is like real. Like everything I thought this was, it isn't. And then you're like that gut punch of this is like real life. And a lot of things can go wrong. And I think people forget what it was like to start the journey. If I lost sight of that, I would give podcast advice based on where I am, not where I started. Right, we get more downloads a day than we did in the first year. But that's only because we've done so many episodes. And I think people lose sight of what was it like in the beginning when you couldn't get a single guest and you didn't know what mic to use. So I'm sure it's somewhere in the middle. I'm sure I'm on the far end of it.
Well, there is a continuum to everything you talked about. You know, there's the do whatever you want sort of culture that's developing because people have been trained to be narcissists. And then there's the other side of it, which is you just work.
Yep.
You do, and damn the consequences. And we tend to swing between the two culturally. And that's never been any different. Take any sort of topic and you swing between the extremes to eventually find something that's over time, you find something that works and has worked and doesn't, don't violate certain principles and certain rules, of which perhaps, you said, well, I find it it's somehow your responsibility to protect your audience. Who told you that?
Nobody.
But that's been a principle that's been laid down for thousands of years, for all documented history. There are people who feel the responsibility to protect, the people in their charge. Okay, that must be ingrained in us. Some people will say over on one extreme, say, it's not your responsibility to let people do what they want. And then some people will say, no, we have to tell them exactly what to do, or they run amok.
Yeah.
Well, through the years, it's, well, here's what I think, and so I'm going to protect the people in my charge. And you might think something different. You'll protect the people in your charge differently.
Yeah. Yeah, to your point, it's experiential. I think that's the through line, or the point for me is I've had real authentic conversations with so many of our community, and so many of them have been taken advantage of in all ways, in some of the worst ways. And it's like that for me that's part of the purpose. So I think to your point, it's for me, I've had experiences in the past that have shaped me that way. And then it's like the inputs now, okay, this is what feels right to me. So yeah, I think that makes sense.
You had made a comment when you signed up about this idea. I think, is it possible to grow without struggle or something like that? Remember making that comment? We right now are in a culture where we want to remove pain. We want to remove struggle at all costs. Make my life as easy as you possibly can. Or what? It's like, well, what if it's not easy? Well, make it easy. I want my stuff just easy. I want it done. But lives historically have not been very easy. In fact, ease is not a sustainable situation over the long haul.
Yep.
Ease swings back to intense struggle, division, war, and people come through that going, well, hey, we made it through. It all worked out. And also we like try and go back to a life of ease. That's just a pendulum. But I don't think, your question, is the struggle necessary? I think the struggle is necessary. We are born to struggle. That's the way muscles are developed. In our minds, we reach a point of fear or, something being awkward, and we have to push through it. That's a struggle. We find strength in struggle. Sometimes people can, right? I would think that would be your hope. A person goes through struggle, they get up and they're stronger. You had all the things of a life of ease, and yet in a deep, intense internal struggle, out of which you said, screw that. I'm going to forego some of these things to create an authentic, sustainable life that I feel matters.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the struggle gets rid of entitlement. I really think that's what it is for me, I'm not worried about, I guess, creating like weakness. Like I'm not thinking about, okay, if you don't struggle, you're going to be weak. For me, it's more the psychological. I was on a call with somebody the other day and they're like, yeah, my son just had baseball. And I said, who won? And he said, they don't keep score. And again, I know that's a thing. And that's the first time I've ever had somebody answer that. And I really thought about it. I was like, okay, I understand for somebody with lack of confidence, it might be good that you feel like a winner because you tried. I love that. I think effort is the most important thing, of course. But I do think that it's easy to get entitled if you don't know where you stand in the grand scheme of things. That's all for me. It's like people tend to get entitled when they get results that they didn't earn because they don't have the awareness to understand that they didn't earn the results yet. And that's the thing. And I think the only way to avoid that is to have some sort of struggle or some sort of resistance that forces you to look in the mirror. There's nothing better than a good workout. When you think you're crushing it, and like that's why I love weight training so much. The weights don't care. When you think you're crushing it, throw another plate on there and then give it a go. And that's humbling. It's important to be humbled. And I think on the other end, action is required to build confidence. I think it's also required to build humility. And if you can live a life somewhere between, well, I guess humility is the goal, right? You're confident, but you're aware enough to realize that you have room for improvement. But I think the only way to get to know you have room for improvement is to see your losses just as much as you see your wins. I really do. I really do. I'm very grateful now. I wasn't in the beginning, but I'm very grateful now that I went through the time where I was broke and I couldn't, like my girlfriend paid rent. I couldn't even afford to pay rent. But now I have a different perspective of I am blessed. I am blessed. And I cannot ever forget what that was like because the struggle helped me understand things. So, but I also understand circumstantially, some people, their struggle is completely different. So it's a very paradoxical, deep philosophical conversation.
Pretty universally, people who are given influence are people who come from a life of adversity, overcame that life of adversity to go on to do something great, and are calling you, the listener, forward into that life of greatness. Those are the people, those are the models who are given influence. Everybody else is given entertainment. You know, you can look to the celebrities, you know, who have not come perhaps through adversity. They've got cash and they're just, you know, throwing themselves around on television. It's like, hey, that's entertaining. Would I give you influence in my life? Am I going to like model my life after you? No, not at all. Not a chance. Not really interested in what you have to say, but it's entertaining. But when it comes down to it, a living life, living a sustainable life, growing, like you talked about, you know, be a better man. That we have to follow somebody. We all will follow someone.
Yep.
And that gives them we give those people influence. And almost without question, those people have always have some sort of time when they were broken or beaten down, and they came through it with grace, with something solid, and they're calling you forward into that life.
I think it instills confidence in you that this person can figure it out. I really think that's it. I was thinking the other day, so I went to the fire academy, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago. I wanted to be an on-call firefighter. And I was thinking, like, I've always looked up to firefighters. Why? Because it almost seems like they can do anything. They always seem, and maybe it's just my perception of it, but they always seem like they always have side jobs of like carpenters, or it's like, okay, you're a carpenter too. Awesome. And then they're like, oh, I can do construction too. And I can do this. And it's just, it was always so interesting to me, and it instilled confidence in me because it's almost like they're a Swiss Army knife. They're a Swiss Army knife who can kind of do anything. And I think, to your point, when you're facing resistance, you learn grit and you learn flexibility and you learn certain things and you learn certain parts of yourself. And if your life was hard, everything else gets a little bit easier. That's the interesting thing, is if somebody had now, Obviously, you have to face the inner stuff and figure out what that means to you. But if you had a really hard childhood and now you're not experiencing any of that, you can use that adversity to your advantage. But it does. It takes a long time. It takes skills and it takes coaching and it takes a lot of things. But I agree 100%. You look at somebody who has dealt with a lot and you say, wow, I admire that, or I connect to that because I've dealt with a lot too. And if that person can get there, maybe I can get there. Or they're competent, they're confident, they have a bunch of proof in their history. Yeah, I think it helps. It helps instill confidence.
It answers the question, am I able?
Hmm. Yeah.
And so when we look at somebody who has modeled this idea that everything, all hope was lost and they were able, then that might mean that I'm able as well.
Yeah.
And too many times we find ourselves in a, perhaps, sitting on the side of your bed going, this isn't worth it. I can't do this.
Mm.
I'm not strong enough. I'm not able. But when we go through those situations and come to a point of I am able, then
Mm.
it develops character, right?
Yeah.
And we take that character in increasing measure to build the life that we want to live, to show up to the life that we want. And I think that's where a perhaps it gets lost on people
Mm.
that the process is necessary to build character.
Yeah. I'm terrified of planes, Jason. I don't like planes. I don't like flying. Not a fan. Doesn't make any sense to me. I understand it's physics, but you can't see physics and I don't like it. But in order to build confidence and certainty, I did a lot of research. And what that research shows, and you can think about this for anything really, when you're in like turbulent air in a plane, that's nothing. Those planes are tested so their wings can like fold all the way up. That's nothing. That's never, I won't say never, that's almost never going to happen in real life. If you think about like what's the maximum weight on an elevator, it's not the number on the side of the elevator, it's way higher than that. That's what they've deemed safe. So, even to what we were just talking about, when you have limits that are a 10 out of 10 and your average day is a 5 out of 10, things are a little bit easier and you're not stretched beyond your capabilities. And I think that's the important thing. And that's what we're talking about here in whether it's leadership or whatever it may be. When you've struggled, challenge is easier. Challenge isn't necessarily struggling, or, when you've suffered, struggling isn't necessarily suffer. And it's an interesting thing. I think you can really only understand what you're going through based on what you've gone through. Because you need perspective. You need something to compare it to. And I think we do that with other humans too. That's why many people get fired up when very successful people didn't really do anything to get success. They're just like famous for being famous. And then there's other people who are incredibly intelligent and working so hard and they never get the recognition they deserve. And I think that's because there's a little piece of all of us that says like, oh, that's not fair. Or I'd like to be that, or I'd like to be that. It's interesting. The human condition is a very interesting thing. If we learned anything today.
Yeah. Well, this idea of following somebody, who do we learn from? I think it's so important to add into that mix because it takes our responsibility. Our lives are our responsibility. My growth is my responsibility. I can do something with my circumstances, or I could just sit there. It's all my responsibility. However, it's really important who we surround ourselves with because how would we know? How do you know that the weight on an elevator is what it says? How do you know, like to your point of how do you know that plane's not going to fall out of the sky? Who tested that? How did they test that? Is it, I spent some time in Albania teaching about videography and some storytelling stuff. And the couple weeks before we had got there, half of an apartment building just fell off into the street because over time it had rotted away because the plumbing doesn't work so well in Albania. It's old Soviet era plumbing, and they didn't realize you have to vent something to be able to get water out of these things because where's the air go? Where's the air displaced? It goes up, that holds all of the water in. And so I was in a beautiful marble, amazing hotel with an elevator that had a rating on the side of it. And there was one more space. Some guy comes running onto we're in the lobby, comes running onto it, and the doors close, and it goes.
Mm.
It wouldn't go up.
Mm.
It was stuck. We were stuck there. And so then somebody presses the open door button. The guy gets off, and then we're on our way to, I think I was on the 3rd floor, and my drain in my shower would not drain. And so I was, standing in this pool of water, and then you had to just wait. As soon as that was full, you had to wait for it to drain out slowly over time, bubbles coming up periodically, because they didn't understand basic plumbing.
Mm.
So I think a lot of times we build our lives with no model for how to build a life, particularly
Yeah.
now in this day and age when we're so disconnected from one another culturally, that we end up building things that don't work.
Mm.
It looks like it works. It's got plumbing. Boy, that is a shower, but don't use it.
Right.
That is an elevator, but don't trust the number.
Yeah.
And we have the opportunity to get back, and this goes to your point of, protect your audience. You have the opportunity to filter out what works, what doesn't work over what period of time, knowing that our experience for the past maybe 100 years is a blip. That is a insignificant amount of time, and all the things we've maybe feel like we've invented anew. Well, good luck. It's all an experiment.
Mm. Yeah.
They'll be talking about you 100 years from now going, you did what?
I think about it all the time. That the fact that it hasn't been that long for humans. When you think about it, at least civilized humans like we are, it hasn't been that long. And so much has changed, but we still don't know much in the grand scheme of things. There's no way we possibly could based on what's out there. That's such an interesting thing. I have another quick. I was talking to Alan, my business partner, and when we get super tired, I get very giggly and I just say stupid things of have you ever thought of this? And I was like, Alan, you know what's weird? Tomorrow morning, we're going to get onto an airplane and there will be 2 people in the cockpit that we have never met. We will never meet. We don't know what's going on in their life. And we're just going to be like, cool, take us to where we're going. And that's such a weird, weird thought. And I guess that just goes to the elevator in the bathroom or the shower in Albania as well.
We trust people blindly.
We do.
And we walk courageously into that until we get burned. And then we learn to ask questions over time and go, do you really know what you're talking about? And look deeper. And then you sometimes find out that person does not. There's no weight. They're not going to withstand winds. They're not going to withstand rains. And those winds and rains are going to come in life.
Yeah. Well, I think that goes to your original point of sometimes you got to just find out. Sometimes you find out yourself, you know what? Oh, I thought this was going to work. It didn't. We talk, I don't know if you remember the banjo minnow. The banjo minnow was this lure on TV and they showed you cast it. They cast that. Did you see it?
Yeah.
They cast that thing into a pool of starving fish. And these fish are like, oh my goodness, I need the banjo minnow. You order that thing. My buddy did. He's like, I never caught a single fish, but those commercials were so good. But the banjo minnow didn't work and he got burned. And he's like, I will never buy something off an infomercial again. It's very interesting. The banjo minnow.
That's a great example. Well, we're running here at the end of our time for Coffee with Humans. But Kevin, this has been great to know you and learn more about you. I'm actually going to throw your, I think, what is it? nextleveluniverse.com is where people can get a hold of you.
Yep. And, I appreciate it.
Recap. Why would someone want to go there?
Oh man, we are obsessed with self-improvement and we are trying to do it in the most authentic way through our leadership by leading by example. So everything we talk about is something we're doing, something we've tried, something that's vetted, and it's based on adding value first. Holistic self-improvement for dream chasers. 7 days a week in your pocket, every single day, from anywhere on the planet for free. That's us in a nutshell.
That's a great speech. Holistic self-improvement for dream chasers.
For dream chasers. If you want more, we want more for you.
That's awesome. Cool, man.
Thank you, my friend.
Well, thanks for being here. For our viewers and listeners, this has been Coffee with Humans. My new friend, Kevin, you can find him at nextleveluniverse.com. Holistic self-improvement for dream chasers. That's awesome. Well,
thank you, buddy.
Catch us next time. YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitch, Facebook, and more. One of the things I love about Coffee with Humans are the raw conversations I get to have, meeting new people just like you. If you or someone you know should be on Coffee with Humans, go to coffeewithhumans.com. Remember, the only rule is no sales calls. This has been Coffee with Humans. Subscribe to get updates or click to have coffee with me. coffeewithhumans.com.